I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're listening to Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the sins of the underworld. We're Ireland's top podcast for 2025, and now we've got a new website. So if you want to learn more about crime and criminals, if you want stories, extras, and podcast subscriber specials, go to www.crimeworld.com.
So, again, yesterday, we had to report on the news of another murder-suicide, this time in West Dublin. I mean, these stories are unimaginably tragic for everybody involved and kind of hard to report and talk about. But tell us, I suppose, about what we know about at this point about the facts of what was discovered yesterday.
It started to filter out on Thursday morning that the body of a man had been found at the back of a property in Ballyfermot, and just down the road in Clondalkin. Later on, a few hours later, there was a body of a child found. So we kind of started to hear the sad news that this was looking like a murder-suicide, but it was a couple of hours before we had it confirmed, and we went with the story. And that's obviously, it won't be confirmed until there'll be a report sent to the coroners, but that's the Gardaí's main line of inquiry at the moment. They're not looking for anybody else. And it seems that this man, so his name is Oisin O'Reilly, he was a 48-year-old, and his son Oisin, they were the people who died in this case. And Wayne is believed to have killed his son. His son was found Wayne and his son were living in the father's house in Clondalkin. I think it was Leland Drive in Clondalkin, and Leland Road, in Clondalkin. And basically sometime between Wednesday night and midnight, the very early hours of Thursday, Wayne's believed to have killed Oisin. He was left in his bed. Then Wayne is believed to have gone to the house of a female known to him. She lived there with several children. This was in Ballyfermot, and he's believed to have taken his own life in the shed at the back of that house.
So, I mean, when the guards say it's suspected murder-suicide, obviously that's what they believe. But there's always a technical thing about waiting for autopsies and further details like that before something is utterly declared in that way. I mean, it does appear that Oisin had been strangled by his father.
Yeah.
And that that's how he died anyway. Now, these things are really, really, really shocking. I mean, they used to seem to happen very, very irregularly in my earlier career. They do seem to be happening more regularly. But, it's unimaginable for all the family. Now, the background, there's a lot being said about the background to this case, but we do know that Wayne he wasn't a sort of person that had come before the courts on a regular basis or anything like that.
No, so basically it's been said that the guards, there were some interactions with Wayne, but more about from a mental health perspective and from concerns around him. And it was there had been an allegation made. Robin Schiller reported that for us this week, that there had been an allegation made of an alleged threat to kill his son previously, but that would actually, there was no charges brought. There was no, the case wasn't, basically there was no report made, so the charges weren't brought. And in last October, there was actually a missing person report for both Wayne and Oisin issued by the guards. That obviously happens a lot of the time. The person isn't believed to have come to suspicious circumstances.
No, I mean, it's not like those sort of missing persons, they put them out like that because people don't know where they are, or people who feel they should know where they are don't know where they are. But there was at no point was that a suggestion that there was any violence or anything like that involved at that point.
No, and sometimes, I think it's flagged, because obviously we see missing person reports. There's one most days, and a lot of times it may be a teenager who's run away. When we see two people missing, it does raise a flag, but generally we can tell very quickly if it's suspicious or if it's a parent abduction or something like that.
Yeah.
In this case, obviously they were just concerned that Wayne had disappeared with Oisin, and that obviously there had been concerns raised previously. They were found safe and well. Obviously that was over 2 months ago now, and then this tragedy occurred. But so what we know about him was that there were mental health concerns for him, and also there had been alleged allegations of threats that weren't actually followed up with in terms of charges. And I suppose as well, Tusla have put out a statement this week. They said that they weren't directly involved in Oisin's care, but that there had been interactions with the family.
Like, they made a distinction to say that he wasn't in the care of the state.
Yeah.
Which obviously the children in the care of the state would be something, that Tusla have come under fire for, in particular the Kyron Durnan case and other cases as well. But this is a different matter. Tusla interactions would obviously mean that at some point social workers have, discussed Oisin's, his circumstances with the parents. In relation to the threats, people could say, why didn't they go anywhere? Obviously, in hindsight, you can see that there is something that there is a danger. But of course, often these claims are made to people. And it can be one person's word against another. And if somebody doesn't make a formal statement or able to provide some verification, it's very hard for them.
Yeah, because I suppose it has to be looked at from an evidence point of view. And if the person that made the complaint doesn't want to go ahead with it, it's going to be very hard for guards. It could be very hard for a prosecution to be proved. So from that point of view, that's usually, when we look at it from the kind of the emotional point of view, we say, oh, in hindsight, of course they should have went ahead with it. But if they didn't have that evidence there from the person who made the original complaint, then it can be hard with the prosecution.
Of course, and if it becomes down to one person's word against another, it's a different matter. Obviously, if there was texts or phone messages, that becomes something different. But and Tusla did say, their statement says, the death of a child is a tragedy and our thoughts are with the family and all those who knew him and the local community at this difficult time. The young boy was not in the care of the state. However, he and his family were known to Tusla and we continue to engage with An Garda Síochána as they conduct their investigation, and then says it wouldn't be appropriate to comment at further time. Now, I have spoken to some people who would have known Wayne, and as of many other reporters, because there's been extensive coverage and a lot of reporters have been out there at the scene and spoken to local people and people who would have known Wayne, people who would have known Oisin, or the parents of people who would have been in school with Oisin. And it's a complex picture sort of emerges of Wayne, where he certainly seems to have gone into a sort of distressed and out of control state over in recent months. Before, people would have spoken of him as being somebody who was a very normal, nice guy, but there seems to have been some dramatic deterioration. And obviously at the end result of this is he's lost his own life, but he's also killed his own son, which is, an unimaginable and horrific crime. Yeah. It's very hard to know how to discuss these things because clearly mental health was a factor.
Yeah.
Clearly other people feel, anybody who commits these acts is, you can only just read the comments on social media. I don't need to repeat them. It's hard to report on, really, isn't it, and find that balance.
It is hard to report on, but I suppose you have to look at it in the context of is someone in the right mind. Like, he had been detained previously under that. Actually, we alluded to mental health concerns there, but he had actually been detained under the Mental Health Act, which means that there's serious concerns for your welfare. This was previous, and on the occasion in October where they disappeared, they were gone for 2 days. They travelled to Limerick, and then after they were found, he expressed it. We don't know exactly what he said, but he expressed things that concern people as well. So, this isn't somebody who is obviously, in a rational state of mind. And of course, we don't understand what goes through someone's mind in that circumstance. And nobody can say that they understand why a 12-year-old was killed in such horrific circumstances. But I guess maybe as a society, we need to try and take more of a holistic look at it as opposed to just demonising someone who's now dead because, are the mental health services what they should be in this country? There's loads of questions around that,
There's loads of questions. I mean, and there's no simple answers to things like that. If we do, obviously we used to, the Mental Health Act, we used to detain people at phenomenal rates in this country, 50, 100 years ago. And also that was also seen as not great, but there is also, and obviously people were institutionalized for their whole lives as a result. And in recent times, obviously it's become, it's become difficult to detain people. And of course, we don't have the resources or the specialists to help people.
And it must also be pointed out as well that there have been some cases where we've heard of, particularly with women who have killed their children. And we know, for example, Deirdre Morley, her case was found not innocent by reason of insanity. So obviously there was a case put by psychologists that she wasn't in her right mind when she killed her children. So, you have to ask the question if Wayne O'Reilly had survived his injuries, would that have been put as a defence to his mental health care? So, it's obviously easy now to vilify someone who's dead, and he did an absolutely horrific act, and I'm in no way justifying that, but I suppose that doesn't benefit society to just say, oh, he's a monster, because there's been people who have killed their children and have been found not guilty by reason of insanity.
Of course, that was when I first started working as a journalist, there was the law was guilty but insane, where it was a technical. It was probably amounted to the same thing where somebody would be put in the central mental hospital or whatever and treated medically, but they were still found guilty of the crime. Where that law was changed now, so you have, as in the case you stated, for example, where somebody is found not guilty by reason of insanity. So it's complicated, and of course people will look at it and say, no matter what, this is a monstrous act.
Oh, absolutely. Don't get me wrong, it's a completely monstrous act, but I just mean because he's dead now, it's just labelled that way. But there's been other cases where it goes to court and the mental health of that person is a big factor in the case. So, maybe...
Yeah, look, these are complicated and of course terrible for all the people involved. And, when you hear some of the comments from people who are parents of kids in the same school as Oisin, and obviously then it's distressing to think that child obviously was around that deterioration which went on, presumably didn't just happen last week, but went on for a number of months, and obviously that would be shown by the missing person example, where there's clearly a lot of chaos.
Yeah, and you wonder how Oisin, that was impacting Oisin, and obviously Tusla had some interaction with the family, and he was so young, he was 11 when he was taken by his dad in October. He only just turned 12. And we have a story going up today on Crime World about how it's believed that he was, lay dead for hours in the bed, and you just think of this, it's actually really upsetting to think about. So
it is really upsetting, and of course people that have their own, who are parents, might think, well, no matter what, I'd never consider doing that to my own child, and that's a fair thought. You don't have an easy answer to that.
No, you don't.
But I suppose the ultimate thing is that our thoughts are with the people who knew.
Of course, yeah.
And are with the people that are now grieving in this most very horrific circumstance.
Yeah, of course. And he lived with other family members. So with him and his dad lived with other family members, and he went to school literally across the road from his house. So you can only imagine how those people feel. So absolutely, we're thinking of them all.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Eimear.
Thanks, Niall.